Hello, welcome to Just-ok-wargamers. Raymond here, and looking at the second expansion for Oathmark today, Oathbreakers. Really great expansion. I like everything in this one. Let's have a look at what you get. So inside here, the biggest thing is the undead armies. So just like the last expansion, it may not necessarily suit everyone. If you're not interested in undead, you may forego it, but it does have the legendary heroes. That does go for every army, and I think that this expansion is worth it just for the legendary heroes, and obviously you have your military expeditions as well. So let's delve straight into it. Because this has the new undead, what we see is a whole bunch of, well, for me, new artwork. And of course, as always, it's of a really high standard. It's really beautiful. The layout should look really familiar to everyone. And here you have it. This is your undead army. So here are all the territories that you need to make it. And the undead are split into several different units. So you have, I think you pronounce it Reverent. And you got your king, your prince, general, captain, as you would normally. The undead need spellcasters to keep their armies alive. Kind of like old school Warhammer, if anyone played that. So you can see their king is actually a level 1 spellcaster, which is really interesting. And I think the Reverents are meant to be similar to in Warhammer to like the Graveguard or the Wights. So that's all your regular stuff. Champions. The Reverents they don't have soldiers or archers or anything. They just have warriors, line breakers, the heavy cavalry, and the new units, the chariots as well. Then kind of like, I look at it as like the second part of the army is you have the necromancers, who are your spellcasters. And then you have your regular troops, which are your skeletons. Okay, so you have a skeleton champion, no skeleton king or prince. And then this is where you'll find you have your soldiers, your spearmen, your archers. And instead of like a militia, they have a ghoul unit instead, which has the wild charge and nimble, but very, very low defense. The undead have some interesting rules. So they've got the unthinking, uncaring rule. So they generally won't fail morale checks. Instead, if they lose combat by a certain number, they will lose a certain amount of figures. All right, so it should be really familiar to Warhammer players. They also suffer less damage from shooting attacks, like from archers, which makes them really, really tough. We also have their light catapult and ballista. And then the unit I really like is the Wraith, okay, which is one of their unique monster creatures. The Corpse Fire, I don't quite understand. It seems to be really, really pricey and has a 3 hit points, 2 combat dice, a fire attack, but only 2 shoot dice. Maybe someone could explain that to me. The Vampire is really strong, level 3 spellcaster, and then you got the Barrowworm as well, which is really interesting. You look at it and you go, wow, it's got 16 hit points, 5 combat dice, defense 12. And a fight value of 8. But then you go, well, it's got an activation of 8. And because it's undead, it uses the undead activation rule, where they have 1 less activation dice than normal. But I'm sure it'd still be lots of fun to play. So that's the undead side of things. Really awesome to see them included in there. I'm sure they'll get tons of use. Let's have a look next at the legendary heroes. So let's look at legendary heroes. If in the first expansion you had the ability to make your units a little bit unique by giving them battle honors, so they could have a extra reroll in the game, legendary heroes does a somewhat similar type of thing, but to your characters. So essentially, narrowing it down as small as possible, you pick either a character or a model that has the champion special rule that isn't a regular troop or a monster. So you could potentially choose like an ogre or a troll. You add 30 points to its total cost, and then you can give it one of about 30 different traits. Each trait can be used once in the game, and it has some type of special ability. Units can get multiple traits. Each one will cost 30 points. And to do so, they first need to gain experience points. For that, they can get experience points by participating in games, doing heroic deeds, and they need to get enough experience points to match their point level. So if you have a goblin champion with a heroic trait, they're going to get experience points and get the ability to get a new heroic trait much quicker than, say, a troll or an ogre, because they cost many more points. You can have your heroes die in combat, and they would lose their legendary traits, or they might get captured or wounded and miss several games. And then you have the heroic traits themselves. Each heroic trait only adds a one-off per game effect, and none of them, I believe, are super groundbreaking. Some of the ones I like are Blade Storm, where you could have a figure all by its own, and once per game I get to roll all 5 combat dice, including the champion dice. So a big heroic last stand. You can see there's several pages of it. I really like the shield up, so that you essentially take 50% of hits away from a one shooting attack. And I like shield wall that adds 2 to your defense bonus. I think that's really, really cool. I can imagine that on a unit of stout dwarves. And then lastly, turn the line, I think, is another one just to point out. So you get 1 free maneuver. So a really good way to get a unit out of dodge really quickly if there's, say, like an enemy directly behind it or something like that. And that is the Legendary Heroes expansion in the book. It is really simple to add on to your games. It doesn't really take pretty much any extra bookkeeping beyond making a quick note of what legendary trait that hero has. So let's move on and look at the military expeditions. So in this expansion, Oathbreakers, there is 3 military expeditions, and each one is 3 games in length. So all moderate little campaigns. They all have, I guess the theme is like undead spookiness to them. So a little bit more generic than the Battlesworn expansion, which is all water focused. These expeditions are all really fun to play. They all have unique special rules. Once again, and I'll keep on mentioning it, my only gripe is really is the maps. Okay, so again, big long explanation on the setups for Lost in the Hills, when that could be shortened considerably. Instead, you just have a nice map, nice visual, put it on the table, chuck on your terrain pieces, and off you go. But they've got some fun little scenarios in there. Lost in the Hills, where you get to set up your opponent's army, and they get to set up yours. And then they have ones, big towers, magics emanating from the tower and affecting your units and everything. And just like in Battlesworn, generally most of the outcomes will affect the next scenario. They also have a nice little addition where sometimes an outcome from one of the middle scenario 1 or 2, will actually grant you the option to potentially put a new territory into your kingdom. Okay, I thought that was a nice little addition. Okay, there's military expedition, sunken roads, and the sunken stones. Each one of these has a unique territory that you win at the end of the expedition as well, and those territories have some unique additions to your army as opposed to just units. The Well of Prophecy, I think, is a pretty good expedition to actually start out on for new players. The first scenario only has 800 points, which is just a hand, that'd be 2 boxes of troops in Oathmark. They can't have any figure worth more than 100 points. You're probably going to be led by a champion. And they can't have any artillery enormous and no unit can contain more than 10 figures. I think it would be good in more of the expeditions to include a first scenario like this, so that you kind of have like a growing campaign. You know, scenario 1 could be 800 points, scenario 2 might be 1,200 points, scenario 3, 1,500, and then the big finale, scenario 4, could be a big 2,000 point game. And this one kind of does that a little bit, which is cool. And then, of course, I've got the new Strange and Catastrophic Events table. So the Strange table, we're looking, you know, a new theme of spookiness, I guess. And then, of course, you have the Catastrophic Event table as well, which I rarely see. I'll move straight on without a pause and quickly go for the appendix. The appendix is actually quite a bit bigger in this than Battlesworn, and that is because they have added in a whole bunch of new territories that you can add on to your kingdom. And they're really good, I think, because these territories add on more than just units. I find that there's too many territories in my kingdom to the point that I'll never use that amount of units, and it can get a little bit repetitive. You know, whether or not I have human spearmen or an orc spearman, it doesn't really make that much difference. So these territories you probably need to discuss before adding them to your games of your opponent. But you know, you might get something like a healing well, which means that your troops, your heroes will heal faster. You know, if they're out of game for 10 games, it might be with healing well. Maybe they're only going to be out of the game for 5 games instead. You get the Master Fletcher that add on a bit of extra range to your archers, maybe giving you a slight advantage over your opponent. The precious metals mines can make magic, you know, a magic item a little bit cheaper. None of them are groundbreaking. You know, they're adding on a couple of dozen points to your army. But it's a nice little addition. And then beyond that, the new special abilities is pretty limited. Really just looking on the things to add on for the chariot rules, as well as the shadow form, which is, I think, just for the Wraith. And then, of course, all the new rules for the undead, and then the new undead spell list. Boom. And that's it. That is the Oathbreaker expansion. Really good little book, totally worth picking up just for the expeditions. That the legendary heroes, I think, is a nice add-on as well, and the undead, just another faction to be playing with for your games of Oathmark. So let me know in the comments if you've picked up Oathbreaker and what your thoughts are on it. Till then, keep on gaming, and I'll see you later.